Welcome to week 2 of the QUT Design Lab series of videos supporting our program based on Wendy Laura Belcher's second edition of Writing Your Journal Article in 12 Weeks. I acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara peoples as the traditional custodians of the unceded lands in Meanjin, where I'm recording this. And I recognise that these lands and waterways have always been places of teaching, learning, research, creativity, storytelling, and arts. I'm your writing wellbeing coach, Dr. Abby Winter. This week, we're going to be talking about the argument, which is like your red thread running through your article, holding it all together. So, the biggest thing we went through last week is the importance of tracking your time. This is going to be a weekly thing. For those of you joining the QUT Design Lab series, at the end of each session, you'll get time to plan your writing for the week. And at the start of each session, we'll check in on what we managed and what we didn't, because reality happened. But we also talked last week about other things like setting up your software and your workplace at home. One thing we didn't really touch on is the importance of ergonomics. In one of my many other lives, I trained as a workplace health and safety officer. So the most important thing to remember with ergonomics is that everything you're using a lot, you should be able to reach by being a penguin. Tuck your elbows into your sides and sweep your hands from side to side. That's your area of reach for the things you will use all the time. The keyboard, the mouse, the document you're copying from, your water bottle. Anything beyond that immediate reach, you're going to be stretching to get to. And that's a bad thing for your body, particularly in an ongoing, everyday kind of way. So put things where you can reach them, or away in a place that you have to actively get up and go to get them. Just beyond your reach is the danger zone for repetitive injury. Okay, back to the content. This week's homework included doing a bit of reading and thinking about the argument you're going to make in your article. Belcher starts chapter 2 by talking about what makes an article publishable. And on page 62, she makes the point that it's basically saying something new about scholarship that already exists. It's inserting your brilliant idea into the ongoing scholarly conversation. And the best way to do that is to make a compelling argument. Not in terms of you did, I didn't arguments, but being persuasive about your point. As she says on page 67, an argument is 1, your journal article's singular significant idea, 2, stated in 1 or 2 sentences early and clearly in your article, and 3, around which your article is organized, 4, emerging from or linked to some scholarly conversation, and 5, supported with evidence to convince the reader of its validity. Later on, she then uses the metaphor of being a detective versus being a lawyer. The detective gets to follow the clues one after another until they figure out who done it. But you're not writing a murder mystery, so you don't need to lay out all your evidence in the order that you found it. You need to be the lawyer. You need to know which side you're on. You need a position. You need to make the best case you can. And you absolutely need to present the best of the evidence to make your argument a good one. As Robert Davis and Mark Shadle wrote back in 2000 in their article, Building a Mystery, Alternative Research Writing and the Academic Act of Seeking, the research argument constructs the academy as a site for informed conversation. Writers of the research argument seek to become experts, taking the research they need to formulate and support an intelligent position. They are not, however, charged with ending dialogue and establishing set truth. Instead, their responsibility is to use research to inform debate and to position themselves as reasonable persuaders. And that's from page 428. Now, on pages 68 to 74, Belcher lays out the different types of argument and non-argument that people make in their journal articles and other writing. There are basically 4 ways to check whether what you've written is an argument, which she calls the argument tests. Firstly, an argument is something that you can agree or disagree with. It's raining outside isn't an argument, it's just a statement. The second test is your own gut. If you feel sick about making your argument to other people, that may be your body telling you that you really haven't got an argument yet and that you should keep working on it. The third test is what she calls immediate dispute. and it relates to the agree-disagree test. If someone can immediately respond to your argument with a, no, that's wrong because, then it's an argument. Rainy days make people more productive is the beginning of an argument. Put up your hand if you disagree with it. See? Her final test is called the puzzle answer, and it's about the importance of what you're doing. As she says on page 69, an argument addresses a question that deserves an answer. Now, before I let you loose on crafting your argument, a few warnings about things that an argument isn't, which again Belcher presents as tests to try and help you figure out whether you've actually written an argument. The topic test on page 70 checks for whether you're just making a statement. Usually phrases that are a giveaway for that are things like, I'm exploring or I'm examining. The observation test, also on page 70, checks for whether you're making an observation, and the way to do that is to check whether you're explaining something. Everyone today is wearing a red shirt is an observation. To become an argument, I'd have to add a contestable statement like, because we're all angry, for example. The obvious test on page 71 is another check for the agree-disagree and the immediate dispute tests. If what you're saying is a, well, duh moment, then you're not really making an argument. People should be paid for the work they do isn't an argument. Next is the variable test on page 72, which is kind of like the topic test, but you're looking at two variables interacting, work and pay, for example. It only becomes an argument if you take a position on how they interact. Appropriate pay increases people's willingness to work overtime, for example. Basically, it's all about taking a position, having that evidence-based place for people to agree or disagree with. The next test is the gap or overlooked test, where you're arguing that something matters because it's a gap in the literature, say, or has been overlooked, like trans men's experiences in accounting firms' boardrooms. But what you're actually doing there is making a case for the significance of your research. Absolutely, it matters, but it's not your argument. And as Belcher says on page 73, fortunately, it's just one step from your claim for significance to your argument. Just state what backs your claim for significance. Her final test on page 74 is the speculative test, which is just you wanting or predicting something because of your research. It's great to have speculative recommendations, and they're often a lovely basis for writing the future research part of your conclusion, but they're not your argument. So, your argument needs to be a statement explaining something that matters, that someone can take a position on, can agree or disagree with, on the basis of evidence. And to be clear, what we're working on here is your argument, the big one that holds the whole article together. You may well have other smaller arguments throughout, but right now we're looking at the overarching one. And if you're really stuck, on page 77, she gives you a couple of templates for starting. Like, through my study of topic, I found that evidence, which suggests that idea is true. Or you could use Stephen Postula's formula for an instant thesis. Although, general statement or opposite opinion, nevertheless, thesis or your idea, because examples and evidence. Don't be afraid to change your argument as you go. As Belcher says on page 84, a shifting argument is not a problem, but a sign of dedicated thought. So, your homework this week begins with a bit of looking at your article and following Belcher's steps on page 83 to 88 about marking up your article to revise it around your argument. And you might start with reworking your introduction and outline. She has other suggestions. Work on a hard copy if you can, and highlight your argument. If you can't work on a hard copy, save a new electronic copy to work on. Like our discussion last week about backing up multiple copies, don't ever cut words or ideas and just throw them away. Put them in another document because you never know when you're going to need them. If you do go more than about 4 or 5 pages without a highlighted argument, make a note to revise and include it. In each paragraph where you've highlighted your argument, does your main point come first? Last? Not at all. In which case, revise. Check that you've clearly stated your argument early within the first couple of pages. If not, revise. Then re-look at your introduction in more detail and revise it. Make sure the body of your article is organized by your argument and not just by evidence in order. Finally, revise the conclusion or create a draft if you don't have one yet. Make sure your argument stays the same throughout, from introduction to conclusion. Remember to track your actual writing time, and I'll see you next time.